Good morning, everyone. This is Gary Gomes. I'm coming to you with this is October 26th, around 8 a.m. in the morning, and we're recording to do an overview of the month of November into early December, and we'll also be talking about the election, the upcoming election, of course, and other things around the world. Okay, this is Vedic Astrology. I'm Gary Gomes. I've been a Vedic astrologer for 30 years. Those of you who tuned into this channel before have seen me. And I want to talk about some really interesting developments over the next few weeks in which there'll be some planetary changes. One has, in fact, already occurred, which I don't know if I addressed in my last video, but Venus has moved into debilitation. And that's very important for relationship life in general. Venus is also directly aspecting. I'm going to show you a chart. So we're going to go into this. By the way, for those of you who want to contact me, I'm on YouTube, as you know. I'm on Greater New Bedford Cable Television. Thank you very much, Greater New Bedford Cable Television. And I'm also going to be posting on other streaming services fairly soon. And also we'll start podcasts, which I've been promising for the past few months, but again, fairly soon. I'm in New Bedford, Massachusetts, which is sort of like halfway between Cape Cod and Providence. And I've been a Vedic astrologer for 30 years now. And I'll be discussing some of the implications for the planets in our lives through a Vedic astrology perspective. I'll also incorporate some Western elements this week, just so people can get a little taste of that. But basically, I'll be talking in these programs. I'll talk about how astrology is affecting the world, and also how it's affecting various Vedic sun signs. Now, a Vedic sun sign, you have to move ahead in the chart. So Aries is typically April 15th to May 15th. Taurus is May 15th to June 15th. Gemini is June 15th to July 15th. You get the idea. So the signs start on the 15th of the month rather than on the 23rd of the previous month. So it's a little different. Indian astrology, or Jyotish uses a sidereal or a star-based zodiac. Certain other systems of Western astrology do too. It's not unique to Indian astrology, but it's really not used all that prevalently in Western astrology. But I have found this particular zodiac tends to work extremely well for events forecasting. Western astrology can do a great job of that as well. I'm not saying it doesn't, but for events forecasting, especially if you have the right constellations and the right backdrop, it works extraordinarily terrific. So you can contact me if you want individual readings at 508-525-0001. I'm also at Crystal Expectations at Comcast.net or at Gary Gomes. You can look me up on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. I have 3 different sites on Facebook, to be honest. And you can look up Gary Gomes Vedic Astrologer on Facebook, or you can just look me up. And I will have a webpage devoted exclusively to me. The webpage I currently have is devoted to the store that I co-own with my wife called Crystal Expectations, which is at 854 Brock Avenue in New Bedford, Mass. The phone number is 508-990-7898. And you can text me directly at my cell phone, 508-525-0001. Or you can email me at crystalexpectations@comcast.net. And there's another email address at the end of the video. All right. And if you're on YouTube, smash that like button subscribe, please, because I am trying to build an audience here, and uh, share the video with friends of yours or with people who you think might be interested. All right, that having been said, let's go to the charts. So right now, map, which is kind of interesting because if you look carefully, the United States is going through a rather tumultuous time right now, as we all know. I've seen, again, this may be my memory being colored a little bit, but I seem to recall the late 60s, or at least the late 60s being, the mid to late 60s being more tumultuous. Um, Obviously, we didn't have a pandemic then, uh, but there was a lot of domestic violence. There were a lot of protests, many more than we're seeing now, to be honest. And there was a general feeling that things were unraveling. I don't get that impression right now. I don't get the impression that people think that things are unraveling. They may not be happy. They may not trust the government, but I don't think they're getting the perception that things are getting out of hand just yet. Now, one of the reasons for this is because of the nature of the major planetary period the United States is in right now. And that is, we're in a Rahu major planetary period. Now, Rahu is the North Lunar Node. Rahu, and during the late 1960s, we were in a K2 major planetary period. So there was a lot more interest in spirituality, a lot more interest in dropping out of culture, a lot more interest in going it on your own, a lot more interest in, there were a lot of gurus coming into the country at that time as well. And a lot more worry and fear about drug use, although certainly the issue of prescription drug abuse and the legalization of marijuana are new topics in the United States, but they don't seem to be quite as front and center as they were. And we also had an extremely unpopular war that was waging. We had the aftermath of the passage of the civil rights laws. We had major riots virtually every summer, not just for 1 year, virtually every summer in the streets in the United States. Yeah, from like around 1965 onward. They actually started a little bit earlier. So, so like I said, I'm just not. This is fiery. It just doesn't seem to be to me. Maybe it's because I'm older. To me, it doesn't seem to be quite as out of control. And I think the main reason for that is we had a K2 period, which is the lower half of Rahu. It causes eclipses of the sun. It advocates for overthrow of government, revolution. Rahu's revolutionary, but it wants to change. It doesn't want it. It wants to reform. It wants to rebel. It tries to bring in the outsiders. That's why we had a person like Donald Trump, who's not a traditional politician, elected in 2016, which was the start of the major planetary period of Rahu. And right now we're in a Rahu Jupiter period. So if you look down at the chart, you'll see that Jupiter is over here. It's in the seventh house. Okay, so the first house of the chart is always over here. That's where that little diagonal line is. And this gives the United States a Sagittarius rising sign. And I'm using July 4th, 1776 at 6:30 p.m. chart for the United States. It puts our moon in what's called Nakshatra called Sadabishak. Now, the United States is in troubled times because this past year it entered what's called a 7.5 year period of Saturn. And what that usually does is it gives countries or people major challenges they have to overcome. And typically, it's not considered wise to change jobs or change course during the middle of a Sati Sati. A lot of people do it in any event. It's not it's not something um, that is or a 7.5 year period of Saturn. It's not something I'm saying people are wrong for doing. It's just not considered wise. It's certainly not advocated by most astrologers I've spoken with. Also, Saturn's in the same sign with Ketu, which is kind of a revolutionary kind of a sign, kind of a planet. So this is without even taking into account Pluto or Uranus or Neptune or any of the outer planets. And this is the chart for today when I'm talking with you. So we have Sun and Mercury in the first house. We have a debilitated Sun that indicates a weak government. Mercury's retrograde, communications are scrambled, and there are lies flying all over the place. This is not really a surprise. This is a political season, but these are just extraordinarily, these are big whoppers of lies, okay? So, and I'm not saying it's one side. It's not one side. It's both sides are telling big whopping lies. So basically, Mars is aspecting Mercury in this chart. Mercury does not aspect Mars back, but Mars has these special aspects in Indian astrology. And Mars and Mercury tends to give this kind of fast thinking, like what I would call adjustment of history forecasts. So you'll have one party saying they said something or they didn't say something when you can actually find evidence that they did say it or they didn't say it. So it's just really claim and counterclaim. But Saturn will tend to, during a Sadhisati, the first stage of a Sadhisati is often the most shocking because it creates a break in pattern. So that people are coming from this Jupiter, this Sagittarian Saturn, where everything seems possible, and this started around this started a few months ago, and all of a sudden it's in Capricorn and saying, wait a minute, everything's not possible. We have limitations. And Jupiter's about to move into this sign. Now, one of the reasons that I'm kind of excited about this, so there's a concept in astrology that Jupiter gets debilitated in Capricorn. I'm kind of looking forward to Jupiter being debilitated because Jupiter is the ultimate super spreader planet. And what I mean by that is Jupiter's by definition, it's a benefic planet. So whatever you have, it gives you more of. So if Jupiter's in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is actually this aggressive kind of warlike sign, it's going to give you more virus. You have virus, okay, we're going to give you more, okay? And when it moves into Capricorn, I actually think you're going to see the virus slow down, maybe even ultimately stop growing and subside a little bit. Also, one of the things I'm really looking forward to, and again, time will tell whether or not I'm right or wrong. Venus is debilitated, so that's given right now by transit. Venus is debilitated. And by transit, I'll just show you that 1 second. And by transit, that means that essentially Venus rules over highly purified forms of anything. So essentially Venus is the pure essence of an item. So let's say we're talking about medicines. Venus is responsible for the medicines that are broken down and purified and made into refined substances so they have full potency. So there are problems with that full potency, as we know, because then you have to, if you get like, I'm trying to think of a case where full potency isn't good. Full potency can overwhelm other things. It can, so let's say we have, so we all need carbohydrates to survive to some extent, right? So refined sugar is a pure carbohydrate. Pretty soon your system is going to have, number one, an energy overload from that pure sugar. Number two, you can develop diabetes if you have too much of it. Number three, um, it causes other health problems. It can give headaches. So without some kind of a balance or some kind of an adjustment, pure items can be detrimental. But in terms of fighting, in terms of the way we develop medicines in the West, there's a strong code on purity. You know, essentially it's supposed to be free of any um, modifying elements. So some of the viruses are in a little bit of trouble right now. Around the end of October, you're going to see some of the viruses actually start to show good results because Venus will move into Libra. That's what I'm optimistic about. And with Jupiter moving into Capricorn, because I said this a few months ago, with Jupiter going into Capricorn, we were actually seeing the virus start to slow in growth a little bit or stabilize in certain regions. When Jupiter enters Sagittarius, it starts to explode again, to be honest with you. So essentially, you have two benefics which can do good things for medicine. Venus is actually for allopathic medicine, which is essentially the medicine we practice in the United States. We're not homeopathy is popular, but it's not as popular as allopathic. So all that hypersanitization they do in the hospitals, that's all Venusian. Okay, and so Venus is, so all these vaccines are being looked at as being under very critical eyes right now. They're being looked at very critically. There's been one death in Brazil from a vaccine, right? And nobody really knows if it was from a vaccine or from some other side effect that wasn't caused by the vaccine. They're still exploring that. But basically the vaccine will have a pure form when it hits Libra in this chart. Will it be 100% effective? Probably not, because Venus is Libra's second favorite sign. It'll probably be fully effective by March or so, when Venus is in Pisces. And that's why I'm kind of predicting this thing will essentially start to peter off much sooner than we think it will. And it's mainly because vaccine developed here about another 5 months, another like super vaccine developed. Jupiter's not spreading it anymore. And when I was looking at spreads, I was looking at previous epidemics, and it was always Jupiter and Mars that were doing the spreading, not K2, which is the planet which is usually suspected of doing it. So essentially, people want to move. They want to be out on the road. They want to have their freedom, which is a Jupiterian principle. They don't want to be told what to do. And so with Jupiter and Saturn, tighter controls, less restriction. But the economy is not going to slow dramatically because there's what's called but it'll slow a little bit. But there's what's called a Nietzsche Bhanga Raj Yoga when Jupiter and Saturn are together. So this is not guaranteed, but based upon charts I've seen previously, this to me looks highly likely. Also, the United States hits. Now, the United States has been in a Jupiter major planetary period, and Jupiter's normally considered a good planet. Saturn's been aspecting Jupiter in its natal chart. So that the aspect of Saturn is said to hurt things or even destroy things. It's exaggeration. Saturn's aspect doesn't really destroy things, but it's exaggeration that's used in a lot of Indian astrology books to teach the principle that Saturn's glance is bad. So Saturn will enter a Saturn subperiod on November 2nd. And if you look at the United States chart over here, Saturn's Shadbala strength is extraordinarily strong. It's the strongest planet in the chart. It's in the 10th house. He gets all sorts of blessings. So you'll see the United States start to calm down, recover. In terms of what it means for the election, I think that Biden has benefited from this Rahu period right here, this Jupiter Rahu period right here. I think ultimately, and this is also looking at the individual charts, and again, it's more of a toy cost for me than it was last time. Biden could easily, based on the polls I've seen, um, Biden could easily be the next president of the United States. But I've also looked at the individual charts, and the individual charts seem to give a slight edge to Trump. Now, true confession, the last time I predicted the Trump win, I was saying to myself, I don't see how this guy can win. I don't see how the astrology can back up this guy winning. I just don't see how it's possible. And I find myself in the same situation this time. But the astrology does seem to indicate a win for him. There are other astrologers who I respect who use different dasha systems or different interpretational techniques than I do, who say he will not. But just based upon this chart, based upon what I can see from this chart, I think you'll see Donald Trump get reelected. And I think it's mainly because of the mistrust which has developed over the past few years in terms of media representation, in terms of, and everybody distrusts each other. I mean, it's really, I don't think I've seen the level of distrust in government this high since the mid 1970s, when nobody trusted government. And the 1990s were also kind of a watershed for that as well. And we also had a similar Saturn Jupiter conjunction at that time. So, at least as far as I can prognosticate, we'll sort of come out of it. But the unrest will continue on for at least a couple of years. As a matter of fact, I think you're going to see major shifts in the United States over the next 15 years or so. And they won't all be in the progressive direction, to be honest. Some of them will be, but some of them will be more. I mean, communications will tend to go wild around 2023, and you'll start to see a period of like really enhanced prosperity around 2025, like ridiculous levels of prosperity around 2025, and even some. But I don't think we're going to see a war within the next couple of years. The chart just doesn't seem to support it. War probably not for at least major war, at least not for another 15, 14 years or so. At least that's the way I'm interpreting the chart. Now, in terms of the world's surface, the world's environment, and I think you'll see the United States becoming increasingly isolationist, to be truthful, over the next few years. But basically, so Rahu's in an 8th house planet is going to be looking inward. This isn't a planet where it interacts much with the world. So let's go back to the current chart. So now that I've had my 2 cents on that, let's go back to the current chart for November. We'll change this. We'll get out of the United States chart. But don't worry, everything will turn out in the long run. Everything works out fine. Okay, so let's go to. Okay, so let's get out here. Let's go to a now chart, and I'll modify that. My apologies. Okay, so we're only a few days away from a full moon. That's important. in astrology. Relationship life will be rough, especially the first 3 weeks of November. Just to give you a heads up. Okay, but that's November 26th. I didn't want to go there. See, no, November 1st. So we're going to look around the world now. All right. So the United States has Sun is still debilitated, or it's in its weakest possible position, close to its weakest possible position, and around November 1st. It's a full moon, though. Okay, and the full moon will come by the end of the day or into November 2nd. So it's a great time to gather things together, complete tasks, to reach out, make new contacts. It's usually a good time for to pull things together. If you're a ritualist and you do any kind of rituals, full moons are great times to do them. Even if it's for in terms of worshiping the saints, or not worshiping, or doing prayers to the saints for protection, those kinds of things. Full moons tend to be the most receptive moons. And I'm talking to you at the end of a period called Navratri, which is essentially a wish fulfilling time. So again, like I said, put your wish caps on and start planning for what you want to pull together over the next year. This is really, in certain traditions, this is considered New Year's, and there are a lot of New Years. So I'm not, I'm not claiming any one religion or another. There's our calendar New Year. There's an Indian New Year. There's a Jewish New Year. There's a pagan New Year. So 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 essentially, this is also the time when the veil between the worlds is kind of thin. It's the fall of the sun. The sun is going into basically its weakest phase of the year, and so that'll tend to make people a little bit less optimistic. They'll start to get a little bit more. Sunlight starts to die out, right? Shortest day of basically the shortest day of the year is coming up, around December, or the shortest daylight time in December. But this full moon looks actually pretty good. The only thing that's a little bit of a drag on it is the Saturn's aspecting the sun. So it's basically bad for governments. It's bad for authority figures. So if they can do a cooperative kind of a thing, or if they can show themselves as rebellious or being different, that's great. There's also what we call a parivartana yoga between Venus and the Mercury. And Mercury is the planet of communications. It's retrograde, but this is also a really good time for communicating, for writing, for bargains. And with Venus in the 12th house from the Sun and Mercury, it indicates that what you spend right now will probably be well spent. You probably won't enjoy it until around the 20th or so, because Venus will go into the sign of Libra, where you can actually enjoy things. And K2's in Scorpio. So K2 in Scorpio, that's K2's strongest possible sign. So trust your instincts about other people. If you feel other people are misrepresenting themselves to you or telling you the truth, you're probably right. Okay. Jupiter's still in Sagittarius. It won't move, as I said, into Capricorn until around November 12th to November 14th. And Mars will stay retrograde, relationship life, really until around November 19th. After that, it'll move forward and it'll start to move into its own sign, Aries, and it'll do better things then. Things will start to, so projects that were delayed, like especially connected with housing and things like that, those will start up again around November 19th. So people will feel like they can move forward and they can with some assuredness. Right now, we feel like we're sliding backwards because Mars is in Pisces, and a lot of the actions we take, no matter which action we take, seems to blow up in our faces. So essentially, when you have this kind, and Moon's about to move into Taurus along with Rahu, so that's going to create a lot of panic and a lot of confusion. And I think the days in and around the election are just going to be, so just prepare yourselves for that. I'll be surprised if it's resolved on the day of the election itself. That's just what my gut is telling me. Although I've seen that predicted before, it was predicted in the last election, and it actually went pretty smoothly. But there was a lot of fallout afterwards. There was a lot of people were shocked, stunned, unconvinced. Pick your adjective. But so we may not see a resolution of the election. Earliest November 4th, latest November 19th. Okay. In terms of problems, K2s and Scorpio side tends to give sea-related problems or accidents in water. Can cause things like volcanoes and earthquakes. So we're going to look at that carefully. But there's not an aspect of Mars on K2 which could trigger it. Rahu's in Taurus, so again, this is fear or panic from earthquakes or from finances. Saturn's in Capricorn, so that's a relatively steady placement. And Venus in Virgo, like I said, people just aren't happy right now. They're afraid, legitimately afraid, I think. So let's go to the astro. Okay, so if we're looking at the planetary lines, and I looked at a different map yesterday, and for the October 26th map or the October 25th map, there was a lot of concern around this part of the country. So that's moved out a little bit. And this Rahu line has moved out here into Iceland and over Norway and Sweden and all the way down into China and Southeast Asia and into Indonesia and into Western Australia. So, and there's a Saturn line going through New Zealand, and there's also, let me move my picture out of the way. There's also a Jupiter line running through Japan. So a couple of the areas that I targeted as having problems were obviously the West Coast, because we have the Saturn line on the West Coast. We have Mercury lines running through the states where a lot of the fires are occurring. So Mars is aspecting Mercury in the natal chart, and Mars is right next to Mercury over here. So those fires will probably continue, unfortunately, in that part of the world. And it'll take really until around late November for them to calm down. The sun is moving through the middle of the country, so you're going to see some rebelliousness through North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, and yes, New Mexico. I should know that much better. And you'll also see some panic arising in places like Ecuador, Colombia, Guyana, all the way around here through central Russia, through Southeast Asia, through Australia. So that's where the panic lines are. Now, in terms of damage from things like earthquakes or floods or things like that, you have certain parts are a little bit vulnerable, like far eastern Turkey is vulnerable. The middle of Turkey has a Venus line running through it, so this indicates to me problems with medicines or medicines getting distributed. But it doesn't indicate any long-term catastrophes to Turkey. England has a Jupiter line running through it, so England will have some problems. Jupiter and Saturn lines running through it. England will definitely have some governance problems, and a lot of the stuff connected with Brexit is happening around this time, right? So that's not a surprise. And so will Sweden and Norway. So Sweden's had variable results with um, the path it's taken on the coronavirus. Also, you're going to see increased outbreaks in coronavirus in Central Europe, a little bit to the east of Italy, and probably in Greece, and probably in Algeria down through South Africa. In terms of earthquakes, again, we're looking at the West Coast, some danger over here in Southern California, some danger in even up as far as Oregon, but not really as prominent. So I know there's been something in the news lately about uh, Portland lying near a large fault. I don't think you're going to see anything major happen up there. Um, and but there's a possibility of a small event, and we're looking at Rahu and Ketu lines. Basically, Iceland looks like potentially dangerous spot to be in, and this entire line through um, basically through Pakistan, not Pakistan, excuse me, um, through China, uh, looks very damaging, all the way through, like I said, Indonesia. So those are the trouble spots I look at. Also, I look at Rio de Janeiro because we have a Saturn line that usually indicates some misery, and we have a Rahu line close to Hawaii, so there may be some fear of, uh, of epidemic or other natural catastrophe out there. In terms of the overall map, this isn't a bad overall map. So I'm emphasizing the bad parts. Oh, and also you'll see some government disruption in uh, Iraq. It looks like Iraq and Syria to me. Okay, sorry about that. I just had to. Yeah, because of these Jupiter, Saturn, and Sun lines, that's not good. So, and also in Ethiopia and regions close to that. So we have several trouble spots in the world. The United States actually looks like I said, it looks like anti-government demonstrations, but more on a little bit on the right here, a little bit more on the left. So in the middle of the country, a little bit more on the right. In the south, a little bit more on the right. In the west, a little bit more on the left. I'm using right, left, Democrat, as code for right is Republican, left is Democrat. Okay. So let's get back to the chart and let's look at what's happening over the next month for the various signs. Okay. But we do have some optimism. Planets are going to move into better positions, at least in terms of the pandemic, in around mid-November a little bit of a slowdown in the economy, though, between, at least from what I can tell, between um, November. So that the Trump administration is talking about is going to look more like a check mark. Okay, so 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 essentially it'll be it'll go up, but it won't go up as quickly as they anticipated. It'll take a little bit longer. In terms of second waves, I haven't even looked at that yet, to be honest with you, because I have a suspicion, and I could be wrong. I have a suspicion this one will not act like a conventional pandemic. Um, and if there is a second wave, it'll be a much milder. Um, although there will be some disease problems coming up next. Prepare yourself for this next summertime. So around the end of the summer, but it won't be this particular virus. And I'm basing that upon Jupiter moving into Satabishak Nakshatra, which is a little bit of it'll be a variety of small issues, variety of, so, yes. So Satabishak is kind of notorious for causing health issues. There'll be a variety of health issues. So let's get back to this. And also a variety of scandals, which we're all, yay, that's great. Well, it's not really a good thing for the country, but Jupiter will move over the moon. It'll be a little bit better. People will be a little bit more optimistic, but there'll be a variety of problems to resolve, and especially social justice problems and problems with people being deposed. And that'll be kind of a universal problem when Jupiter goes into Aquarius, because it'll show some people coming back that we thought had gone away, and both for the good and the ill. So that being sufficiently vague, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. So we're looking at this particular chart. The sign of Aries is going to have a few problems as the month begins. It'll have some unhappiness in its relationship life. Venus is in the sixth house, as ruled the seventh house, so that'll be a little bit difficult. It'll want more money. It won't feel confident in itself, but it'll be very popular and it'll be very secure. So that's the positive. Unexpected gains are coming for this sign, and also if the sign works hard, it'll achieve a lot of financial success, but it has to work hard. So and Jupiter's in the ninth house for this chart, so essentially the chart is protected. It's just going to seem a little bit uncomfortable for the first 3 weeks or so. Taurus is showing, and also keep in mind, people in this chart, when you see a malefic presence in the seventh house, it doesn't mean a relationship is going to end or a marriage is going to end. It means there'll be problems in that particular marriage. More challenge, though, is Taurus, because Taurus has Rahu in its exalted position throughout for the next year and a half, and Ketu in the seventh house. Now, not everybody who has these positions gets divorced or falls out of a relationship. But there is a time when people will normally separate for a little bit, or will feel kind of alienated from each other during this kind of a transit, during a lunar node transit of the first and the seventh houses. So essentially the idea to keep in mind, if you have this May 15th to June 15th sun sign, is to keep saying to yourself, everything is going to pass. I may be unhappy this month, but I'll be happier next month. And my relationship partner may seem like they're cheating or they're unfaithful, but you can't stop that, and don't automatically jump to the conclusion that they are. Just look for more evidence before you reach that conclusion. Also, Mars is in the 11th house, so it'll give some gains from real estate, from property. It'll give new friends or aggressive friends. And also from this chart, Jupiter in the 8th house is again beneficial because it will give financial rewards from the spouse. So the spouse will actually be doing better, or the relationship partner will actually be doing better. Partnerships will be more fruitful. Saturn's in the 9th, so again, hard work needed to produce financial gains. Gemini is the 3rd house, or is the 3rd sign. This planet will have relationship opportunities, very strong relationship opportunities throughout most of the month. And they'll feel a certain amount of freedom or a certain amount of unbounded opportunity. They'll tend to slip away when Jupiter goes into the next sign around November 12th, but it'll come back in the middle of next year. Okay, so this is not necessarily a bad combination, and the relationship partner will be much better because this is kind of an impulsive position for Jupiter to go into Sagittarius for the sign, and it hasn't been unblemished. They're actually getting some clear thinking about relationship life for the first time in a long time. And Venus is in the 4th house, so they're not really happy with themselves right now. That'll pass by the end of the month. And there's a lot of focus on children for Gemini's suns and Gemini rising and Gemini moon, and a lot of focus on health. So they're really worried about health and accidents, so they should be careful traveling. Saturn's in the 8th house, so some problems with elders, and Mars is in the 10th house. Generally, a rebound in career life can be expected during this time. If we look over here to Cancer, Cancer is ruled by the moon. The moon's in the 10th house, so Cancer will be very strongly focused on career and also on relationship life. So relationship life, they'll either be with an older individual or they'll be happy to be alone. That's sort of like, or there'll be a big age gap in your relationship partner. It doesn't necessarily, Saturn doesn't necessarily mean older, it means different generation, basically. And or different mindset. Doesn't necessarily mean different generation. I'm sorry, that was a little bit of an exaggeration. Venus is in the 3rd house, so they'll feel like a lot of their ambitions or a lot of their goals aren't coming together. Home life again is a little bit disharmonious. They'll feel like they're not in control in home life, and children will be a little bit temperamental. Over the next year and a half, they'll be a little bit cranky and difficult to control. Jupiter, however, is in the 6th house, so that's actually good for overcoming enemies and overcoming illnesses. Saturn's in the 7th house. They may decide on a final relationship partner, and it'll stick for at least 2 years with this particular sign. And the 8th house lord in that relationship partner will bring in some financial gains or financial rewards. Mars is in the 9th house. It's a good sign. It's a good planet for this particular sun sign, rising sign, moon sign. So Mars, if the person has power or courage to do so, they should travel over the next year, start investigating options, and there'll be change of job. They'll start looking at getting more popular, getting more coverage. Leo is a little bit discouraged this month. So there's a lot of discouragement going around because the sun's debilitated. So Leo's a little bit down this month, but it's not badly placed. And within about 15 days, around November 15th, they'll start to feel a little bit more confident, but it'll also feel a little bit unsure of itself because of the Sun K2 conjunction, which causes solar eclipses. So we'll talk about that more when we do the December chart in the next session. I'm not going to do December today; it's going to take too long. But when we have this kind of a combination, the person will start to be more aggressive, more forceful. So this will be after November 15th. The sun will start to feel more aggressive, more forceful. And they'll also start to feel luckier. because Jupiter's going to go into his fourth house and his fifth house. They'll feel like they have more support of the world around them. Some groups like to call it support of nature. I like to call it support of the environment. It's kind of the same thing. Saturn aspects Mars in the chart. So again, some financial gains from business partner or from relationship partner, but not without effort, not without really, really hard work. So most of the charts show financial gain over the next month, so that's good. Moon is in the ninth house, so that'll indicate changing luck, but luck will also be squandered a little bit. You'll tend to take perhaps unnecessary chances next month. Rahu's in the 10th house, some unhappiness with career, so not really the greatest month for Leo, but again, this is Vedic Leo, so this is September 15th to October 15th. But I think one of the things you're going to see is that it's August 15th to September 15th. But you'll also see a growing awareness of what they have to do to get rid of their problems, because they've had some problematic placements over the past month, and this is sort of like hits a low point for them. So essentially, Leo is the kind of a sign that doesn't stay down for very long anyway. This looks like just 1 month where things are a little bit rough, but money will be good. Overall luck will be good. Relationship life may be a little bit argumentative, but not really horrible. And career life a little bit unsettled. But these aren't major catastrophes, and this isn't really a do or die kind of a period for the planet, for the sign Leo. For for Virgo, that's August 15th, September 15th. That's September 15th to October 15th. I told you it was a retrograde Mercury, and I'm blaming that planet, which I really shouldn't do. You'll have this combination of wealth with personal unhappiness, a lot of courage, ambition, basically good luck at home. This isn't bad. And you'll also have a lot of financial growth coming up over the next few months. Saturn aspects Mars, so relationship life will be a little bit challenging. But again, relationship partner will have access to a lot of money, so that's a good thing. But there'll also be a feeling that you can move forward in your ambitions and your goals, and that's, so this sign will be very ambitious over the next year or so. Career-wise, you'll probably do well, but there'll be delays in earnings. And in terms of friendships, you'll probably have a lot more friends this month. For Libra has stability. The sun in the first house, but again, that's a financially good placement, the 9th house Lord and the 12th house Lord. So this indicates this sign will be spending a lot of money. This is October 15th to November 15th. K2, but they'll speak kind of harshly. K2 in the second house will take off a lot of the filters that we have in polite behavior. So they'll speak rather bluntly and rather harshly and rather critically, to be honest with you. But if they can temper that, their instincts will be very strong, and they'll be good. They'll be good judges of character. Jupiter's in the 3rd house. Not a large desire to rock the boat, right? Just sort of like sticking with tried and true formulas. And Saturn aspects Mars, so some minor health issues come up, but again, we're not talking about loss of mobility or loss of life. We're talking about, essentially stomach irritations, a little bit accident prone. Moon can indicate changing of relationship partners, but again, that's a little bit ephemeral. It doesn't last long. And Rahu's in the 8th house. It'll also give this sign a great deal of interest in digging behind the scenes and trying to find out the secrets of the universe. So overall, career life looks fairly good for this sign. The moon's in one of the houses of career, so it indicates new business partnerships. Luck looks good. Financial gains look good, although weak. So that's not a bad condition. Scorpio rising, Scorpios are going to have, this is um, November 15th to December 15th, and they'll have a lot of money coming in, a lot of intuition, strong intuition, a lot of courage to pursue their goals, but maybe not the best relationships with their children. Some issues with health, especially around the stomach, and some disappointment or dissatisfaction with a relationship partner. This will last for about a year and a half. So, like I said, if you're either a Vedic Scorpio or a Vedic Taurus, don't expect a relationship life to run smooth. Some marriages do break up during these transits, but it's not universal. But sometimes it comes as a surprise. So I think that's something to be wary of, to be aware of. Excuse me. But so if you see signs that things aren't going right, try to correct them. If you want to stay in the marriage. Eighth house lord is Mercury. Mercury's in the 12th house, so um, that'll give losses, but gains from those losses, as odd as that may sound. So you may have to give up something in order to get something. Luck is generally good. Career is disappointing. The person will feel kind of boxed in or kind of unhappy with their career, but they'll pass by November 15th. And friends will seem a little bit cranky or difficult to please with this combination. And confidence will be, so we already spoke about career and luck. So luck is good. Um, Career is, like I said, just disappointing. Sagittarius has Jupiter in the first house. Jupiter is really strong in this chart. And slow access of money, some access of property, some problems with children, but also some dissatisfaction with health. Career-wise, this sign will be interested in pursuing new careers or new areas of study. Capricorn it's going to look for stability. It's going to look for courage to change his home environment and also to try to change his career environment, but that'll be a little bit tough to do. Um, yeah, home environment doesn't look happy for these folks, but the luck is strong for this chart, and essentially it looks fairly good to me. This isn't a bad chart. It just means a lot of stability, a lot of predictability. Aquarius will be a little bit more aggressive this month, uh, but again, kind of afraid to change direction. But really ambitious, brave, trying to make itself happy. Feel like it's a little bit imprisoned, and its confidence will be lacking until around the middle of the month. Then it might make some strong changes, especially career-wise. Finances look good. Pisces, last but not least, very aggressive relationship-wise, very strong desire to get involved in new relationship, although I wouldn't recommend it at this time. I'd recommend waiting at least a couple of months. And career-wise, though, it looks great. Moon gives financial growth from the public. Rahu in the third house gives a great deal of recognition and a great deal of popularity. And Sun and Mercury in this sign tends to help it defeat enemies. Strong intuition. This sign should definitely listen to its gut this month. And career expansion is very strong for this sign. Although financial gains will be a little bit weak. That's it for this week. I'll be back next week with more chart analysis and more predictions for you folks. Thank you very much for paying attention. Thanks for staying with me. And like I said, if you're on YouTube, subscribe, like, share. It helps me. And I want to be doing more classes for you and hopefully opening a school soon. Right. Have a great day. Thank you. And namaste.